and I will add. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this big blue globe. While we're waiting for everybody to join us this morning, and it's morning where I'm at, but we just throw into the chat where you're coming in today. It's nice to see where all the attendees are at and who's the farthest. Adam, Austin, Texas, you're fast on the draw there, Texan. Seoul, rock on Boston. Oh, Jacob's in Stockholm. Do you get those little black Swedish fish with the little salt on them? I love those.
Yeah, those sort of the candy, the salty licorice is around. I prefer the sour stuff, but yeah.
You can make a liquor out of them, by the way. I did that my last trip to Sweden. I brought a bag of them back and made liquor at a bar. It was awesome. Zach, Birmingham. Anthony, Troy, Michigan. Oh, you got another Swedish. I can't say that. And coping, is that right?
I can't either. All I can say is, hey, jag heter Jacob. Tala inte svenska. I don't speak Swedish.
We've got our special guest, David from Paris. Bonjour. Chris from Nashville. Kevin from Midland, Texas. Athens, Greece. Wow. Edinburgh, sorry. Scotland.
Edinburgh.
Yeah, I can't say it. I apologize for that. Matthew from Atlanta. Wow, what a distribution. Kansas in the house with Dane. Welcome. Let's see and make sure.
It's been 3 years in Glasgow, so not too far away from Edinburgh.
Yeah. Pablo from California. All right. Well, I think that we got Patrick Phoenix. I think we can probably start. Tatiana from Fort Lauderdale, probably a lot warmer than where I'm at. I guarantee it is, by the way. Welcome to today's community conversation. My name is Sean Hurley. I'll be your community host. We're joined by the talented Jacob Small and Saul Moore and special guest David Licona. Today we're talking Dynamo. This is the Dynamo office hours. So let's kick it off. Community conversations are virtual meetups. I'm sorry, I always add this in there, Saul.
I'm not driving this time.
Experts.
Son Jacob.
We've got to just tell people for the first time in their community conversations here that they happen all the time in RSVP. So they're expert speakers from across the community. Sessions range from deep dives, tips and tricks, live demonstration on products like AutoCAD, Revit, Dynamo, Fusion, to roundtables on industry sessions, emerging trends. They're everything. And you can actually be a community conversation speaker as well. It's from beginners to experts. So it's we try and hit all those different things. All right, now for the fun legal stuff, Saul. Sorry. Just quickly, this is always the fun one. You've seen it a million times if you've been to any Autodesk presentations. This is the one that basically boiled down says, if you make any purchasing decisions, that you make your purchasing decisions based on, oh, by the way, Klaus from Copenhagen, one of my favorite cities in the world. Sorry. Shiny objects. Back to the legal statement. If you make any purchasing decisions today, make them based on the product as it ships today. You know, if we make any forward-leading comments about maybe Civil 3D or Revit or Dynamo, that you do make those decisions on purchasing on the product as it is today. So, all right, next, please. Everyone's line is muted to reduce the background noise. We do invite you to keep your camera on so we kind of get a virtual feeling that you're in the room, you know, in this virtual little world. This is a conversation, so let's try and keep it at that. You know, you can ask questions in the chat or the Zoom. You can raise your hand using the Zoom function, or like I said, type it in the chat and we'll get to it when we can. The session is being recorded. The recording will be linked on a YouTube playlist for Dynamo Office Hours, as well as on the event page where you RSVP'd. So either way, you'll be able to find it that way. By participating in the session, you consent to being recorded. I guess that's an obvious, right? So, all right, let's get into the fun introductions and the content. I'm Sean Hurley. I'm the Autodesk Community Engagement Manager. I'm a geeky technologist in Bend, Oregon. And actually, it's funny because last Thursday I was kayaking in 82-degree weather on the river. And today it was 22 degrees and we got snow, and we've had snow for the last 5 days. So what a bizarre world if you're a bumblebee or a hummingbird.
Cool, and I'll go next. So my name is Jacob Small. I am an implementation consultant now, and Dynamo form junkie. You'll often see me on the Dynamo BIM forums well past my bedtime, when I should probably, I don't know, be sleeping or doing something else with my free time. But I can't get enough of the community. So if you do have questions and you post them up there, know I have probably at least read your forum topic, if not responded to it or something like it in the past.
Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sol. I'm the product manager for Dynamo. We're responsible for its evolution and growth, and you can blame me for anything you don't like in the product. I'm a curious human being. I'm interested in all things and everything, currently based here in Boston, but originally from New Zealand. And I want to give a big shout out to Paulo Serra, who unfortunately can't make it today for personal reasons, but he did participate and help with the content deck today, which is awesome. Paulo's a genius. So very glad to have him, at least here in spirit, if not else. And he describes himself as a pragmatic dreamer, usually based out of Milan, Italy, but does travel a lot. Over to you, David.
Yeah, and I'm David Licona, so implementation consultant in the same team as Paolo, but so I'm really lucky. I'm an innovation advocate, so that's why I got hooked to Dynamo, I think, because I like to do new things, try new things, better ways to doing things. And I'm based in Paris, France, but originally from Guatemala, so that's the background.
Awesome.
I'd like to add one thing before we go into the great content. We have enabled transcriptions at the request of the attendee. And if you don't want to watch the transcriptions, you are welcome to just hide that transcription window.
Awesome. All right. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is number 27 in the Dynamo Office Hours series. So we're creeping up there now with the content. So 27 or 26 previous hours of things, if you want to go back and watch them. There is a YouTube channel, which Sean will be posting a link into the chat for all of that awesome, great content. And today we're focusing specifically on getting more civil with Dynamo. So previously we'd had sort of an introduction course around Dynamo and Civil 3D. This one dives a little deeper, and in about a month from now, we're going to have Dynamo, Civil, and the APIs for both Civil and AutoCAD, and how that all plays together with another special guest, Zachary Jensen. So watch out for that one if you're working in the Civil space and curious about that. So the agenda today is the same as always. We have a roughly 20-minute presentation on getting more civil with Dynamo. We're then going to jump into a live demonstration, but today we're lucky enough to have 2 live demonstrations, one from David and one from Jacob. So cue the danger music on those ones. And then again, Q&A, but as Sean mentioned, please do feel free to sort of post in the chat. Feel free to also raise your hand, interrupt us. We really do appreciate it when this is a conversation, as opposed to us just presenting stuff at a screen for a while. So we encourage you to get on the mic if you're curious and want to, and ask your question live. Otherwise, feel free to type it in the chat.
All right, so from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started talking about element binding. First up, I'm going to put this right out there. This is where we got some great sort of feedback from Paulo early on as we were planning this. There's a very big difference between how element binding is handled in the latest version of Dynamo for Revit, which is 2.12 for Civil 3D 2022. Prior versions, it's not going to behave like this. With this particular version, binding trays can now be discarded, can be stored in the Dynamo graph itself, similar to what we have on the Revit side of things. It can be stored in the DWG as well. As result of storing it in the DWG, you can actually make use of it in the Dynamo Player workflows as well. Note that in order to change that setting that you see up there right now on this screenshot down here in the lower right-hand corner, if you want to change that, you may have to run Civil 3D as an administrator just to be able to get the right access required to be able to make the changes as they come along. Now, my advice on this, it is so much better that this is one of those reasons why it's just time to move past the 2021 and 2020 versions. File format is totally good. There, you know, if you've got access to 2021, you probably have access to 2022 as well. It's over a year old at this point. It's probably time to upgrade to the latest and greatest if you're using the older builds. It will probably pay, the effort to roll that out will probably pay for itself just in this feature alone, in my mind. The advantage with to the DYN, you can still clear out those bindings through the by opening the DWG, or sorry, the DYN in a text editor, similar to what we have with Revit. I have a great AU session on that called "Getting the Good Stuff from Pandora's Box: Element Binding in Dynamo for Revit." Feel free to go check that one out if you do have any questions. The method for sort of opening that Dynamo file up as a text file and removing the content is exactly the same. Then on the other side, we can sort of parse that data into the DWG as well. We're going to clear those bindings out through the command line. I can't quite remember the command, but I'll look it up when we get a minute in the break. It is a very different process from what we had before. And the cool thing with this is it means you can make use of bindings through Dynamo Player. So what do I mean when I say bindings? Let's have a quick look at a sort of recording here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open this DYN file. And then we're going to pan across, and you can see I've got nothing that's sort of modifying elements. I'm not collecting. I'm just making new block references from a coordinate system. And when I hit run, instead of making additional on top of the previously created trees, it's going to go ahead and it's going to move my previously created trees. And I can go ahead and I can open that in run mode. I could save it out to open that in automatic run mode, and it'll update automatically. I can save it to manual and then open it and then hit run. And those trees are going to sort of change every time I hit open. Even though I'm not moving them, I'm still just creating them. And that's because the data relative to which elements were created was saved into the DYN itself, right? The other way that we can get into bindings now, because it saves into the DWG, is through Dynamo Player. So with Dynamo Player, we usually can't make use of element bindings and session trace because the Dynamo file doesn't get saved once it finishes executing. Because it's now serializing to the DWG instead, I can leverage Dynamo Player to make those same, and apparently that animation is not playing. Let me see if I can just open that up live, because why not? All right, give me one more second here to navigate to the right folder.
Danger music came early today, Jacob.
Danger music did come early. So you can see I'm hitting run on that Dynamo Player graph right there, and it's updating the entire piece. This is what I get for copy, paste, replace image instead of copy, paste, and resize. In any case, every time I hit play, I'm getting a new set of trees in this animation. And that's because, again, the session trace data is being stored into the DWG so that we have access to it as the files may update. This is really handy if you're ever going to sort of automate creation of elements based on an external data set. I don't know, maybe you've got a CSV that has station offset elevation sort of coordinates relative to your alignment that you're going to use to place all the utility lines. And then guess what? The spacing on those has to change. Well, we now have to change everything, right? Well, no, we just need to run that same DYN and get revised content, which is pretty cool. All right, back over to the PowerPoint and on to Sol.
All righty, thanks, Jacob, appreciate that. And one clarifying point, Jacob mentioned two terms, element binding and session trace data. They are the same thing, essentially. So if you do hear or come across those terms, you can kind of pair them together. So moving on to transactions. Is this GIF playing? Hopefully it is, maybe it's not. But basically, transactions are a way for the program, in this case, Civil 3D, to record actions taken inside of Dynamo. So transactions actually occur across all of the other features that you use inside of Civil 3D as well. But in the case of Dynamo, there's a couple of sort of specific behaviors that exist. So first of all, every single AutoCAD-based tool needs transactions to tie object IDs to an actual object. So this is, as Jacob mentioned, the way to understand how to have element binding between Dynamo and back into AutoCAD too. Sorry, Jacob, I think you're over the screen. There we go. So that enables you to read and write to the same object as Jacob just mentioned. So Dynamo for Civil 3D has a thing called a document context that manages the interactions with the underlying data place for simplicity. This is sort of an under the hood behavior that sits inside of Civil 3D build for Dynamo, which is awesome. You can leverage that if you wish. And one other point is when you do have these transactions and you click run inside of Dynamo and it makes some kind of change back to your Civil 3D document, that is going to get recorded in the undo redo stack, which this GIF was supposed to be showing. And when that happens, if you undo and redo, it's going to be called out as a group of commands. So no matter how you play with transactions from Dynamo, it's always going to be referred to as a group of commands. In Revit, you have the ability to name those transactions. If you get into the API, here you do not, to my knowledge. Next slide, please. All right, so in terms of notching the ledger, which we just talked about, how you sort of transact things, this is how you get to customize the ledger in some ways. So unlike Dynamo for Revit, which we talked about in a previous session, there are no transaction nodes specific to Dynamo for Civil 3D. So in Dynamo for Revit, you have the ability on a nodal sense to be able to stop and start transactions, which would actually log more of those transactions to the undo redo stack. And in Dynamo for Civil 3D, you can only control that through code. So be that either Python or C#, you really need to engage with the API of Civil 3D or AutoCAD to be able to do this. Luckily, the Python node template in Dynamo for Civil 3D is really comprehensive and comes with a whole bunch of awesome baked-in things, including code stubs for a transaction. So you can see here, marked down in green right now, the only things I actually added to this were all of the circ pieces in the center of the callouts of text. So everything else actually lived here, and it gets you a really easy entry point into writing Python and doing stuff inside of Civil 3D, which is really cool. You can create sub-transactions if you want to, but everything is still going to get wrapped up into sort of the same group of commands naming convention and the undo redo stack. And one other point is that if you do use multiple different sub-transactions, it is going to be slightly less performant than if you have a single one, because you're reading and writing back to the Civil 3D document more times than a single one.
You're
Jacob?
mute, Jacob.
On mute, of course, because I'm having some technical difficulties. I muted myself and then forgot to unmute myself. Any case, we're here now. Documents, one at a time, please. So by default, Dynamo for Civil 3D will only allow interacting with the active DWG. This is the most stable. It is fully supported. However, this can be a little bit limiting, right? We all know that it's quite often the case that we want to modify more than one thing at a time. It's very common that we have multiple sort of DWGs involved in a project. Actually pretty rare that you would have one DWG for that entire sort of tech stack, right? So if at any point you find you are locked up, you may want to check your taskbar. I've put a few of the more common messages related to document issues down there in the bottom. You can see down there on the right hand side. So this first message, Dynamo is not pointing at the current document. When you launch Dynamo, it associates that Dynamo session to that DWG, right? That Dynamo graph, that DYN, needs to be able to see that DWG as the active DWG in order to be able to do pretty much anything, even execute. You can't even close that DYN once you start pointing at the wrong thing. To fix it, tab back into that previously launched DWG. Don't close that active doc though, because if you do, you're going to have to open it back up from scratch. You're going to get that grayed out run button that you see down there at the lower right-hand corner, where you're just going to be pretty much sort of locked out. So keep that in mind. Now, this is all sort of as designed, but that doesn't mean you are limited to only being able to work on those DWGs that you have open. This next slide, if my content is working, there we go. does sort of show that it is possible to actually work with other DWG content. This is enabled by the Camber package right now. It's got some amazing nodes for background processing DWGs. Shout out to Zachary Jensen, who's the Camber package author, for providing this. And he's actually going to be presenting with us in, not next time, it's the session after next, right? So 2 sessions from now, Sol? Okay, so 2
Correct.
sessions from now to talk about the Civil 3D API. It is all listed out under the external section of the Camber package, and you can do some really amazing stuff. This graph that you can sort of make out the details of down there at the bottom is one that I actually recently used on a project where we basically had a whole bunch of stuff that was organized by trade on different layers, and we wanted to have a different DWG for every trade. That's a lot of work to have to go through and sort of isolate those and W block them and then isolate again and W block again and isolate. Maybe I could write a macro. No, I wrote one Dynamo graph to do all that work for me, and it worked quite well. So you can see I hit run here. It instantaneously just went ahead and took every layer that was out there, saved it out to a new DWG, and that's how I got those layers. You know, I renamed the layers in this case to 1 through 5, but that hello.dwg that you see down there, we were able to extract out just the stuff that was on layer 1, just the stuff that was on layer 2, just the stuff that was on layer 3, 4, and 5 to get that text out for just the content that I'm after. This is great for stuff like, I don't know, clash detection and stuff like that.
Jacob, we've got a couple of questions coming through before we jump on. So one question from Adam Riley, curious about how it works under the hood. How is the data serialized to the DWG file? Is it stored in the extension dictionary or in each object?
It is actually in I believe an extension dictionary that the content is storing there, which kind of makes sense because that object itself, you'd have to parse over the entirety of the objects to get that data. So yeah, I'm 90% certain that it's an extension dictionary. I know it's a dictionary of some sort, so the extension dictionary is kind of the common sense one. Great question, though.
And then we have another question from Piotr, like, why don't you provide in Dynamo the option to select the active file DWG? It would not be necessary to close the program to set another file.
So that actually ties back a little bit to Sol's previous content about we need an active transaction in order to be able to run stuff. That transaction has to be able to tie into a document because you can't transact on a nothing. And so we've got to have sort of multiple pieces happening at the same time. And those transactions by default are easiest to manage on the active UI document as opposed to any document. And once we start that Dynamo session tied to that active UI document, the transactions, because we don't necessarily want to pile up our undo menu unnecessarily, tend to tie in that way. So anything else to add on that, Sol?
In terms of active file stuff, yeah, Dynamo has to build a connection essentially to Civil 3D in this case, and it has to point to the correct thing. This is also a case of why we don't currently have multiple different tabs inside of Dynamo, because having run modes, potentially an automatic, doing things automatically when you switch documents could get very dangerous very quickly, and ditto of having multiple different tabs. So to build a connection, Dynamo does that in essence by initiating at that point of when you open the document of Dynamo based on top of that current file. Definitely room to improve in the future. We can look to try and improve the situation to get somewhat what you're looking for, Piotr, but that's the current state as it stands today.
Great questions, by the way, both of those. All right, so on
next
to,
one.
Yeah.
Objects that update automatically. Awesome. So this is just a singular slide. It's kind of illustrating a little bit of a point around how Dynamo and Civil 3D operate together. So it's around this notions of sort of listening and responding and updating to stuff. So Dynamo for Civil 3D listens for changes in the underlying document of Civil 3D through this thing called events. So when things happen, it's an event, and when that event happens, Dynamo listens to it, and then Dynamo can react and update AutoCAD objects. So this is similar to some of the behavior in Dynamo for Revit. There's a handful of different nodes that will be listening to these changes in the background document, and that will automatically update irrespective of whether or not you click run on the graph. So there's a bit of caution, or a word of caution here, with depending on each node's implementation, behavior can be a little inconsistent. So it's just more of an FYI so that you're aware that if something goes a bit funny, this is probably the action that has been taken in the background. So one way to sort of mitigate the issues that arise from this is it's always safest to run the graph manually as opposed to in automatic mode, because you do not inadvertently pull in any changes you did not want in that kind of case before you know what is going on. Caveat there, though, is I personally always play in automatic mode and just deal with the consequences if they arise. I find it a little bit more fun. So it looks like we've got another question from Kieran. I love the idea of using Dynamo within Civil 3D. Will you be demonstrating Dynamo interacting with actual Civil 3D objects and tools? All demonstrations I have observed so far relate to interacting with 2D AutoCAD objects.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the demo I'll be doing will be with Civil 3D objects and AutoCAD objects. So usually we will work with both during our scripts. You want to add anything, Jacob?
Yeah, basically you're going to parroting the same thing. I'm starting with a little bit of Civil data, sprinkling in some AutoCAD basic. Really, I mean, Civil 3D is built on top of AutoCAD, right? So if you can't work with that initial baseline AutoCAD foundation content, you're gonna run into a lot of roadblocks on the Civil side. So that's one of the reasons why our previous demo focused entirely on, like, I did that demo on hatches, right? And we created those hatches to make that sort of brick-looking walkway path. I used AutoCAD objects because if you can't automate that, you're not going to be able to automate the more difficult Civil elements. So great question, though, Kieran. All right, on to the next one. David, this is you.
Yeah. So just to provide some clarification on blocks, because it can be quite confusing when you go into Dynamo and then you see block word all around and you're looking for block references. And yeah, I've seen this too many times in the forum. So the document that was mentioned before by Jacob, it contains blocks that act like containers for other objects. And the model space, the paper space are actually blocks. Okay. So they will be containing all visible objects. That will be the model space. The paper space is what we normally refer as layout. So you can see layout 1 here. And we actually have also, block source block definitions that are used to create block references. So it could be like instances of this source block. And all the entities, the primitive entities that define these block definitions, so circles, lines, polylines, all that is stored there. And then when you create a block reference, you will be adding an instance of this into the model space. So just some clarification for users. When you go into Dynamo, you see block. It's normally will be referred to the model space. We'll see that in the demo afterwards. And geometry scaling. So this is also a fun one that comes a lot in Dynamo forum. So when you work with real world coordinates, mostly outside of the US, then you will have this warning telling you to change the scaling of the geometry from Dynamo, to change it from medium into large or extra large. You can see it right now in the screen, right? So this is because when you bring your geometry into the Dynamo space and you're too far away from the origin of Dynamo, then which is the 000, then the rendering, visualization, navigation will get complicated. But never, I cannot stress this enough, never change it to the medium, from the medium to large or extra large, because you are going to lose data. Okay, so there are some alternatives to hide these warnings. Normally you can just ignore it. Yeah, there's no problem with that. The thing is, when you are developing graphs for Dynamo Player, you will not want to have any warnings, right? Because users who are just consuming the content will, they can freak out if you say warning. So you can swallow them using the function apply, which is what is shown now in the GIF. And another trick to make the visualization easier, if you're really far away and you really need to navigate because you have, I don't know, a complex geometry, just like tunnels, for example, then you can bring everything to close to the 000 with vectors and geometry translate in the Dynamo space, so not in Civil 3D. You're not moving the Civil 3D objects, you're just moving the representation of them in Dynamo space. Then you go close to a 0, 0, make the magic happen with your Dynamo scripts, and then you can take everything back to its original placement with a vector reverse. So that is actually a cool suggestion from Jacob.
Yeah, and fun fact, the function apply node swallowing the warnings is actually a bug, but we haven't fixed it because it's kind of now more like a feature than anything else.
I did not know that one. That one,
Yeah.
bug or feature is a classic question now, right?
Bugs turn into features sometimes.
All the time. All right. Well, with that, that's the end of the slide deck. We're doing pretty good on time. David, that means you're up. I'm going to go ahead and pause or stop my screen share so you can pick up with your demo.
Yeah. So is my screen up there, all right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I have like a really small file, and I tend to do this a lot. So this is my advice. You have some test files where you can test stuff that are not like, huge projects. Start with simple file, and this is what I have here. So I have a corridor. I did some some exaggerated profile for the corridor here, just to have some cut and fill that we will be able to see easily here. So actually looks like a roading back in Guatemala, I think. But anyway, so what we'll be doing here is to create Earthwork solids. And this is actually a workflow I worked with, and I've seen a lot of interest around this. And we'll see afterwards, we'll have some time how to add some property sets. So we have this property set already defined here that is called Dynamo rules. Right? So I'll jump into Dynamo. Okay, so we'll start by selecting stuff from Civil 3D objects. So I'll start with the Civil 3D Toolkit. And in the Civil 3D Toolkit, you have some selection nodes here. And these are really great. And actually, Paolo built it. He added them to the Civil 3D Toolkit after I requested it for this specific workflow. So I'll be selecting two surfaces. First, the EG, so the ground, existing ground, right? And I'll be copying and adding another. So is the project surface. So we'll be creating these solid objects between them. So we have some thin surface extension node here that allows us to create the surfaces, the solids. It's not this one. I always get confused. It's create solids at surface. Yeah. So we will take two surfaces and we'll be creating those solids between them. And this is really useful because if you know Civil 3D, you know that earthworks are only represented as bodies. So afterwards, it gets complicated if you're going to do some beam 4D or beam 5D, for example. So I'll just plug in. Sorry, I have some problem here. I lost my mouse. Yeah. Okay, and then I'll add these to layer 0 because afterwards I'll be deleting them, and you'll see why. So if you see here on the output, it will be creating objects. So it will be creating something directly on Civil 3D and not in the Dynamo space. Okay. So if I run it, so it will take some time. You think nothing happens, but I have my solids here. Okay, and by default, what it's creating is one solid for the cut and one solid for the fill. So we'll be seeing how to split those. Okay, so this is something really cool in Dynamo. You have, the geometry on the solids. You have some, I don't know the name, so that's why I'm searching here. Separate, yeah. So we can separate solids, okay, into individual solids if they are not joined together. So this is what I'll be doing next. Okay, so just separating those solids. I'll run this. Oh yeah, sorry. I need to bring it before to the Dynamo space. I'm really sorry about that. Yeah. So I'll take the object geometry. Okay, yeah. So this Civil 3D object, I need to bring it to Dynamo space to start splitting all my solids, right? So no big mistake here.
Live demo. So there goes.
Yeah, yeah. So as you can see, there are tons of solids created. And why is this? Is because sometimes here, when it's tying up, it's changing into, cut and fill. So we will have these like tiny lumps of solids that we don't really need. Okay, so we'll just inspect this with the solid volume. And tell me how I'm on time, okay, guys, because
Plenty,
so
plenty of time. Take your time.
Okay. So you have like really, really small solids that will just like, erase and just take the big ones right here. Okay. So I actually have a negative one, so I have a null here. So we'll take care of this later because it will be problematic with what I want to do. Okay. So now what I want to separate them into just these lumps of solids that constitute each of the earthworks, okay? Because normally that is what we will do in a design phase. So for this, what I will do is just compare, okay? See which of them have a big volume. I'll take, 5, it's something arbitrary, 5 square meters, cubic meters, sorry. And let's run this. Okay, so I have the true ones that represent the ones that have the volume that interests me, right? So what I want to do is filter this by a Boolean mask. The thing is, I have the null, right? So let's take care of this. I will use replace by condition. Okay, I'll add a code block with false here. Okay, so I'll replace the null with false. And then I need my condition, so I'll ask if something is null. Oh, null, sorry. Okay, so if I run it, my null got replaced, right? Okay, cool. So now I can filter by Boolean mask. And by the way, I haven't shown you these solids, right? So let's go look at them. Okay. Right, so I'm gonna filter this out. I'm just going to take all of these and hide all the geometry preview. Didn't take this one. And now I'm gonna run. Okay, so if I see this, I will have only 3 bodies of solid for cut and 3 bodies for fill. So you get first the cut, and then you will get the fill. This is by design, and this coincides with it's exactly what I had before, right? So if I come here, you will see I have 2 3D solids. Okay, this is normal because of how the first node works. So if I come here, this node is creating also the solids directly in Civil 3D. So this is why I said we're going to delete them. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna select these solids, okay? So I'm creating just, I don't know how to explain it really well, but in my workstream, I'm going to create this buffer here so that the object geometry is going to execute at the same time. So I get these solids before I delete them afterwards. And afterwards, I'm going to just delete the solids directly in Civil 3D. Okay. Because if I delete them directly, maybe I will delete them before getting them into Dynamo, and I don't want that, right? Okay, so now I have the solids. I need to send them back to Civil 3D. And what I'm going to do is separate them into cut and into fill, right? because I'm going to send them to different ledgers. So it's exactly the same, but yeah, first are the cut and then is the fill. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, so now to send them, I need the object geometry. So this is in the AutoCAD shelf object category by geometry, right? Just so you are creating an object in AutoCAD or in Civil 3D session with the geometry that you have in Dynamo. So now I can say this is the cut, for example, and this is the fill. And this is the block I was talking about. So you say block here. What is this asking? Okay, what is this? So if you go here into the document, so remember blocks are part of the document. So we have here the model space. Okay, so this gives me actually a block because it is a block by definition. It's like that in the API, and that is what is called block here. So I actually need to access my current document first, and then I can get the model space. I'll just send my object back to geometry, and I have my cut here. And what else can I do? I can set a color, for example, once I have the objects there. So let me go here into AutoCAD, object, set color. And since I'm working with the fill, I'll use, with the cut, sorry, I'll use, some red. Right, so right now I'm just working with the cut. I'm going to continue with that just for time purposes because I see it's going quickly. So what I'm going to do next is to add some property set, right? So I have here my solids. So actually I have other solids before, but I need to erase them. But yeah, you can see the red one here, right? Okay, and as you can see, there's no property set defined yet. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so property sets. It's really important to give information, okay, to whatever you are modeling. It's the eye in the beam, right? So for the property sets, it can be a little bit confusing at the beginning. They are under the AutoCAD shelf, okay? And first you need to get the property definitions of the document. Sorry, it's not here. Yeah, I never find them, so I already know them by heart. So is the property set definitions? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get the property set definitions from the document just to see what I have. I have this one that is the Dynamo rules, so it's the first one. I'll just select it like this. Of course, if you're trying to do a scalable Dynamo graph, you will not do it this way. But anyway, so I'm going to get this one and going to get its name. Okay, so I'm going to get the name from the property set definition because afterwards here in the objects I have the add property set. Yeah, that looks for a property set definition name. So I will get the objects that I created and just add the property set definition like this. Okay, if I come here, I already have my extended data added, and then I can fill also manually the custom property, or I can use Dynamo. But I'm running out of time, so I'll let Jacob continue. Sorry about this. I'm confusing all the tabs, right?
So thank you,
No
David.
worries.
Great presentation.
I'll stop sharing.
All right, I'm gonna start sharing all of my screen one, and we should be seeing Dynamo open. I got a bit of a head start to make sure we had time. Our task is we've got some information with a couple alignments in our project. They probably don't look, your alignments probably don't look like my alignments with no relationship to each other, but this is a common thing for sample data sets. And then we've got some Excel data, right? Which tells us which alignment and what station and an offset from that alignment that I need for all the power poles in my project, right? So I'm gonna leave that open for now. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to bring that data into Dynamo. The way I do that is with the data import Excel node. So that's going to take our file path, turn that into a file, read sheet one, read not as strings, but as numbers, because I want to work with these as numbers. And then also show Excel. In this case, I'm going to say yes, and that's going to make it so that we can see it here. But if I didn't want to see that, I could just go ahead and say no. I'm then going to use a list.deconstruct. I've shown this a couple times now in relationship to Excel for you guys, because this is super useful because it pulls that heading out. So now I know what index all my different values are at, right? We're then going to use a list.transpose node to basically take the entire data set and sort of flip it on its side. So right now we have sort of each row. This way I'm going to have each column, right? So I've got my alignment names first, followed by all of my stations, and then all of my offsets. From there, we're going to use a Civil 3D selection alignment by name node. And this needs a AutoCAD document current document input. And it also needs those alignment names. And those alignment names are at index 0. So I'm going to use a quick code block, declare a variable, and then say what index I want to pull that data from. Since I declared the variable and didn't set it to anything, I get an input for A. We'll wire that right in right there. And now I've got all 125 different alignments that I want to work with for all 125 different stations and offsets, right? But we don't yet have the station and offset. I got to sort of pull those pieces over individually. And to do that, we're going to go back into the Civil 3D section, Civil Objects, Alignment, and Coordinate System by Station and Offset. So this takes an alignment, a station, which if I think back, those were at index 1. So we'll go down a little bit, give myself a bit of room. A index 1, we've already declared variable A as an input, so it's still there. There's our station. And then we need our offset as well. A index 2 from right up there. And when we wire this in, hey, there we have it. All of our alignments. We'll go back to our 3D geometry view. I'm going to zoom extend. And we can sort of see how those sort of follow along, which is pretty nice. I'm going to group all my coordinate systems by their alignments, because this is just sort of helter-skelter, and it's going to be really handy to sort of have stuff grouped by alignment here. So let's do a list.group by key. This is going to take our list of coordinate systems, and then I need another list of keys. And once again, we've already got that data, A index 0. So the index 0 of my transpose list. There we go. And now I should have, if I put a watch node on canvas, stuff grouped out by the coordinate systems on alignment A and on alignment B, right? And I'm just letting my sort of index preview sort of show that content over. My headset's now yelling at me to recharge it. So if I lose audio, I'll switch over to speakerphone, but someone yell at me real quick. If that happens, thank you, Soul and company, who I know will take care of that for me. All right, so now from here, we've got all these different elements. Let's go ahead and go into AutoCAD. I'm gonna say document, sorry, not document, objects, block reference by coordinate system, because I've got my coordinate systems here. I need a layer. I'm gonna put these on just the layer power pole. You probably want to put something that's on something a bit more common sense than that. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy over document current. Whoop, copy over document current. And I also need from my document my model space to tell it to put this on the right place. And then last but not least, I need a block. And we're going to get a block from that active document with the name power pull. That pulls out my block. Notice I'm doing all this in automatic run mode because, like Soul, I like to live dangerously. There are 125 block references now added into the document, and you can see those have all been added in with their correct station and offset from one end to the other, right? And that's basically, you know, a super useful thing to be able to quickly do that. And we can take this a step further with the 10 minutes that we've got left. I'm now going to take each one of those and we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the overhead wires that string between each one of these pieces, because these are 3D blocks. If I go up to my 3D view. So why don't we actually work with these as 3D elements, huh? All right, so the first thing that we need to do there is we need to sort of figure out what the attachment points are relative to the power pole's location. And I just happen to have this information memorized based on the fact that I've done this with this particular block fairly recently, maybe earlier this morning. So from 2.5 to 2.5, I'm gonna step twice. And we're gonna have some values vertically of 19.25 and 18.25. And I'm going to use these to create a point by coordinates with XYZ values. And I'm going to make these points at my origin, and that's okay. So there's my X values, there's my Y values, but my list structure doesn't quite work out the way that I'd want it to, right? I'd really want something that had all those points. If we think back to our earlier pieces, so these are up at 19.25, these are down at 18.25, there's negative 2.5, 2.5. If you had more sort of pieces, let's say I wanted, I don't know, 4 steps here, you could go ahead and you could change that, and there's 4 sets of points. Whatever way you may sort of want that to work, you can work. We're then gonna flatten this list. And then I'm gonna use a geometry.transform. And this is going to take any geometry, in this case, a bunch of points, and allow us to transform it into any coordinate system. And I've only got 125. Why is that? Well, lacing, right? We want to work with these elements at level 1 so that I work with all that content. So there's my 8 at each piece. I'm going to set this back to 2 just in the interest of processing power. I'm hitting a high number there in terms of number of points that are made. And now that I've got that content, we can start to work with it as we would regular Dynamo elements. So list.transpose, it's going to take our rows, turn them into columns, or columns, turn them into rows. There we have all 500. And then from here, we're going to do a polycurve by points. And what do we have happening? Well, it looks like we didn't say, let's keep our list structure. Now we get all of our points, but hey, we didn't transpose at the right level. And now we've got 2 polycurves, right? Or sorry, 4 polycurves, 1 for each sort of set of lines. So you can see there, when I select this group, all of those indices are down there. We didn't select any at the upper end. And if I select that one, all the indices on the upper end. So I still have the content sort of set up as it needs to go. So from now, we're going to go ahead and do a geometry.explode. And now I've got individual lines set at individual levels. We're going to break these down. So breaking those down into the individual curves, the next piece is going to be to find the start, end, and middle. Curve.point at parameter for each one of these pieces. We're going to say parameter from 0 to 1 3 times, 0, 1/2, and 1. And we need to set, once again, our list levels to get this to work. We're going to use level 2 and level 1. And then set our lacing to longest. And that should give me a whole lot of points, 14,076 points. So that number does align to what my notes said it should align to. So now I can do a geometry.translate. take our points. Our Z is going to be what we translate by, and we're going to go 0, -1, and 0. And again, we've got to play with our lacing because we want to work with everything at level 2 and everything here at level 2 to give us the right number. Arc by best fit through points. Here's our list of points. And then from there, with our arc by best fit through points, we can do an arc by geometry, which I believe is in the Civil 3D Toolkit. I'm going to put this on layer overhead lines. And the block will be model space, which needs our current documents. And when this wires in, hopefully nothing crashes. There we go. And there are my overhead lines added in. Now, we said before, what if I wanted, 4 overhead wires instead of 2? That was pretty simple to change that out, right? So we could actually set this as an input into that piece and then automate the creation of all of those elements. All right, so that was that demo. And I saw a couple things popping up in the chat about the speaker to 11. Yeah.
Yeah, referring to living dangerously with automatic run mode.
All right, so I think that was everything, and we covered all the questions. So Sol, do you want to let us know what we got coming up?
Right, yeah, so very quickly, just in the nick of time, thanks Jacob, thanks David for awesome presentations. We have a couple more sessions coming up. So on the 28th of April, we're jumping into Dynamo and Revit's API, the connection between those two, with special guest Nick Voights. It's going to be an awesome session, so if you're curious about the API, come check that one out. Followed by Dynamo and Civil 3D's API. So this would be with special guest Zachary Jensen. So that's about a month from now. And then beyond that, we're going to be talking to Format, specifically with Dynamo. And we're going to have a special guest, Josh Goldstein, who is the product owner of Format. So he is very, very familiar with Dynamo and Format and makes the most amazing things to showcase to. And then beyond that, of course, there's going to be many more awesome, great things to come.
All right. Don't leave yet. We've still got some good stuff. I'm going to paste a bunch of resources in here. We're going to wrap up with 2 slides. Let me paste. This is a lot.
Spam.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to wrap up with 2 final slides. If you're looking for other ways to connect and engage in the Autodesk community, here's some of the ways you'll be able to do that. I got a couple more here. I'll also paste them to the event page. I gave you some of the Dynamo links as well, where the YouTube recording of the session will show up is on that YouTube list, as well as on the event page. We've got many different other ways you can connect with us. That's our Twitter account, groups, the new blogs. There's even a blog post by Dana DeFilippi regarding Dynamo and Revit. So lots of different ways to connect. You can be a community conversation speaker. So if you have something you would like to propose, or be one of the Voices blog authors. We're always looking for people in the community. So at the end, you're going to get a survey link. Fill that out. That helps us shape and adjust the program and what you'd like to see, and adjustments we can make, and spread the word, and definitely go out there and RSVP for any of the future ones that we have coming up. We have a lot. We have the AEC team doing Ask Me Anything. So one of those will actually be the Civil team. So if you're interested in Civil, and I believe the Dynamo
there is, yes,
crew
I'll
is
be there
going to
too.
be doing one as well. And those are linked on the Community Conversations event calendar right now. So they'll be broadcast live into YouTube. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending today. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, David, our special guest. Thank you, Paolo, in spirit for the Civil extension, and of course, Sol and Jacob. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Hope you got something out of this, and feel free to reach out over any of the channels, especially the Community Conversations one, if you want to have any further knowledge on this stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.